Good morning. We are live. It's afternoon for Eleanor, right?
It's PM. It's the PM.
It's PM in Nova Scotia. This is We Lead Live. We're here Monday and Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. Life's good here. It's warm. We're just throwing the kids in the pool every day, and it's feeling better. It's getting better here. And the reason I started this series is I thought it was a great opportunity, since everyone's stuck at home, to get some of the most amazing women I know on the show, who I've worked with personally, and know that their stuff's the real deal. And Eleanor is no exception. Eleanor, I'm going to tell them a bit about you, but then I'd love you to go more into your story if you can. Eleanor Beaton is truly someone I've considered one of the foremost leadership experts in North America. She's an amazing business coach. She knows her stuff, and has worked with high-level people in government. She sits on 2 boards, really just a class act, if I may call you that. And it's great to have you here. And I think we want to talk about a few different things today, especially around, women in leadership and business and marketing, and what you're observing and what you feel people should be doing right now. But let's start with how you became Eleanor Beaton.
Oh my gosh, way back when I was a little girl. I love this. So I really started out, I think for me, I had really powerful role models in my life. My mother, who was the breadwinner in our family back before I was born, she took big risks leaving the Fiji Islands, going to a brand new country with my dad, and raised me to, I remember growing up and she was like, Eleanor, money is power. Always make sure.
She told you that when you were little?
When I was little, yeah.
Really?
That from a very young age. And I really understood the value and the power of being economically independent and how important that is for women,
Yeah.
So I grew up with really powerful women role models and always felt very sort of drawn to the strength and power of women, but also, seeing how the connection between a woman's power and her ability to lead and her ability to speak and have a voice, So that has always been in all of the work that I've done, whether it was as in my career where I started in advertising and public relations, in the field of journalism, in the field of communications consulting, doing a lot of consulting on positioning, crisis communications with leaders. And then as I started to work with women leaders and women entrepreneurs, really helping them sort of position themselves in their industries effectively, you can't talk about leadership and positioning without, talking about voice and message and the clarity of those things. Yeah. That's how I really that's the thread, I think, that connects, the different things that I've done over the course of my very short career, because I'm quite young.
Are you?
I am. I'm quite young, guys. I've really only been in the working world for about 5 years.
So tell us your observations right now, what you see in the landscape of business and leadership for women with everything going on in the last 2 months with COVID, and where you see this going.
This is such a fascinating question, because what I saw, in the immediate, March 15th, that week, when we realized, oh my gosh, this is real. Borders are shutting down. World leaders are calling their citizens back. Shelter in place orders are going down. For the quarter in Canada, where I'm from, they are anticipating a massive Q2 reduction in the overall, economic outlook. So there was a huge amount of fear and uncertainty. And I think that was really showing up in terms of sort of panic, in the marketplace, panic for women entrepreneurs, just that shock of what's going to happen, how am I going to be, impacted. And there was this resulting, in some ways, kind of run on the markets, So I think there was a lot of.
That's a great way to put it. They're all running in and grabbing whatever attention they can get, and selling whatever they felt. Sometimes I saw some people jumping into selling things a little too quickly, just because they thought it was needed, right?
Right. Well, and I think, in a situation like that, it's a little bit like, I can remember, walking along a street once, and I'm there just happened to be walking beside this woman I don't know. And up ahead of us, a car runs a red light and crashes into a restaurant. And so this happens in front of us. I stop, she sprints toward it. So in some ways, when things get real, when crises happen, you don't necessarily know how you're going to react. And I think there was definitely a lot of reaction at the time. And the key is, I know for me, like when you look at companies that are able to thrive during downturns, but not just, during them, but really grow on the heels of recession. I mean, I've been through this before, as have you. What we'll see is that it's the companies who are really able to lead, to elevate. And in recent weeks, as we have accepted this new normal, I've seen more of this. And I don't know if you've seen this too, but it's almost like I'm seeing more and more women who, now that the shock is real, now that the reality is set in, we are doing what we do best, which is grow and transform. And we're asking ourselves, do I want this? Is everything exactly the way that I want it to be? Is this an opportunity to make changes that maybe I've been thinking about? So now, in the beginning, I was seeing a run on markets, and also people genuinely wanting to be out there and serve their audiences. Like,
true.
Right. But now I'm also seeing this deepening of it's questioning, it's reflection, and it's what's next. I think that's really exciting.
It is. It's exciting. And some of you watching this may be still in the angry phase. So we're sorry. I just interviewed my podcast, Raw Goddess, and she's just like this amazing, Buddha. She speaks and you just feel this vibration. And she was like, some of y'all may have to listen to this later. Like you may not be ready to hear this right now. Cause even I remember I was angry for a few weeks. I was like, what is going on? I have this plan on the wall. Yeah. Everything's mapped out. And this is the plan. I want this plan. This is what I laid out for this year, 2020. Yeah. Woo. And then, I sat back for a bit, as do you. I think I'm not the one to sprint to the accident. I'm just like, okay, let's check out what's going on here. We may not have all the information, which I think, everyone adapts and reacts differently too. I've always been a bit of, I give myself permission to contract. That's how I process and then come back out. Yeah. And I think we're seeing more of the women who've been through that process now as well. Yeah. They kind of pulled back and they were like, all right, I'm not going to go jump into something. If what they're doing was working, then perfect. Yeah. For some people, it's the perfect time to just accelerate what they were doing. Others may want to contemplate a bit what their next move will be. And I think we're starting to see them come out, right? Come out of the closet.
Totally.
In a bit. Yeah. So behind the scenes in your business, if you could share, what you're still very much thriving. You're out there. Tell us what, any adjustments, if any, that you've been making behind the scenes with yourself, with team, how things are going at home with the boys.
Right. Exactly. We're going to go there.
if you can, because I think for so many of us moms too, this all comes together, man. Like we were not counting on, we were lined up for summer camps and all this stuff. And, so I'm just, if you don't mind, share the whole picture.
No, happy to, the whole picture. So initially, and this was obviously the big difference between where I am now and where I was during like the 2008 crashes. I have a lot more to lose now. Let's be honest, like my business is a lot bigger. My team is a lot bigger. The things that my overhead is higher as an entrepreneur. So all of these things are very real. And so in the immediate, now I've known that and have prepared for that. So, following profit first, building up the reserves, making sure that all of that is in place. And what was interesting is during that in the initial, as it was happening, I know, from my years advising leaders around crisis communications that visibility is important and transparency is important. And that really started with the team, so once we realized, for me, it was like when the NBA got shut down, so
that was the last, you're like, okay, you can't do that, right? Like I'll sit home.
Right.
I can let my beauty things wait, but not the NBA, please.
Just not the NBA. The Raptors are doing so great. So that's when I realized just how significant this was going to be. And I felt scared. And the immediate thing that I did was starting to have conversations with the team. Hey, I don't know how this is going to affect us, if it's going to affect us, the extent, how long, but here's what I do know. We're backstopped financially. So we have, we have things in place, as a company to for a while, not forever indefinitely, but for a while. So I'm going to be as clear with you guys as I can. I'm going to be transparent and tell you what I know. I'm going to see, we need to gather information, figure what's going on, and I will roll out a plan.
Mhm.
And our plan is going to be 90 days at a time, with a big emphasis on 30 days at a time. So I was really clear with them about that. I think that's important, to be clear, with the team. So that was definitely in place. And we saw that we are a higher ticket company, like we sell higher ticket offerings. And so we definitely saw that in the immediate, the taps have opened again. People are buying. Some people had zero, it was just like it didn't even happen. COVID, there were zero problems with, or zero interruption with sales. We definitely saw a slowdown in the immediate sort of aftermath of the news. And now it's like spring has sprung. People are getting tired of being locked down. And in our industry, there's a huge need for support, for education, and right now, this is really interesting. One of the big predictions is that companies who are able to, like, businesses really need support in things like marketing, leadership, business development. We have to get the economy, it moving again. So that's kind of what I saw from a business perspective. And so I was in the Dominican and I was like, I want to do something. Like, I want to create something for people that's going to be really helpful right now, that's going to help them position themselves as leaders, that's going to give them something to do, a way to show up. Because I think a lot of women entrepreneurs wanted to show up, but they didn't know how to, and so we created an offering called Marketing Through Adversity. It was so much fun. Like, can I tell you, it was so much fun.
Tell me.
To launch. It was fun. Okay. It was fun. It was super, a really, really powerful program. And that's what we pulled it together, launched it as a team, and just are wrapping up this week with our first cohort, who's just a fabulous group of women entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And does that are you offering that again, or is it on demand now?
So we'll be offering that again. Our next cohort starts in early June, sort of last week of May, early June. You guys can go to adversitymarketing.com to check out some information about it.
Ooh, so, good.com. That was I bet that was in the Dominican. You're like, I've got it.
I know.
You're on the beach.
That's it, right? On the beach.
Good ideas at the beach. I miss good ideas at the beach.
Right.
That's been a transition. Now you guys are pretty, I don't want to say isolated up there anyway, but like, has life changed much for you, really? Because you guys you got a great property, you got a boat, like you're in the woods. Are you in the woods? Where are you?
Like close to the woods. I live in the countryside on Eastern Canada, and so for me, we had a virtual team anyway. The big changes for me were this. So obviously my kids are at home. We'll talk about that in a minute, but virtual, like I coach my clients, we run our programs virtually. We typically have retreats and we had to make that a virtual event. So there were things like that, but for me, my life hasn't changed all that much. I had been looking to come off the road. So I had done a ton of traveling and a ton of speaking for years, and I was really taking myself off the road. And this has really done that,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and our boys, like my two sons are 9 and 13. My husband works with me in the business. I'm going to say, like, I know, and when I say this, please everyone understand, like, I know how challenging this is, and I don't want to, speak lightly about a huge challenge that COVID has been. But for our family, it has been a blessing in a number of different ways. So we have a lot of time together. The boys are independent, right? So I spend like half an hour with them in the mornings doing schoolwork. I'm teaching long division.
Did you have to brush up on that?
Okay. Have you seen The Incredibles when the dad is teaching by math and he's
Incredibles too.
Math doesn't change.
Yeah.
And like, how do you do it? And I'm like, this is how you do it. This is how I'm doing it. Math doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah. We're starting to see that coming. And I'm like, maybe this is a good time to consider homeschooling just to not deal with this, like for that one reason alone.
Well, you know what? It's funny. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because I'll look at it and I won't be able to do it their way. They're like, Mom, you're wrong. It's not that way. And I'm like, red. I'm like, math doesn't change.
Okay, what's funny too, I'll throw this in because they're working on the math too. And then Brett tries to work with them, right? And he's and I don't know what's going on, but the kids they're like butting heads. And remember, the twins are only 6; they're about to turn 7. So like this is something major's going on. I go out there, and then I work with them the next day, and they're like, "Yeah, that's how we do it." I'm like, "There's there's a third way." Like he was showing them like there's like an Australian way to carry the digit and addition. I'm just like, okay, we all need to have a plan. We need to agree on one protocol for the math. That's great to hear. And your boys are at an age too that they don't want to be with mommy all the time, too. So they're probably liking their dad and hanging with the dad more.
But and this is so interesting. It's like, how it always used to be that it wasn't really until the Industrial Revolution that we started educating kids in these cohorts. Everybody's the same age.
Yes.
It used to be that you would be in a community of people, all different ages. I have noticed that they are easier to get. They've always been relatively easy to get along with, but they are even easier to get along with. They're happy, they're thriving. I don't know, spending lots of quality family time has been good for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though, sometimes you're like, I just need to go to the spa.
Yeah. It's definitely an easier day. I mean, I was thinking of doing a whole show on this, and like for anyone who's considering even next year, maybe saying, you know what, maybe this disruption has made us realize that this is more doable than we thought.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more doable and this will give us freedom then to travel longer with the kids. And I don't know, it's a great time to just say, okay, we have choices. And I think that's been an illumination for many women. Some choices may have been taken away, but over the last few weeks, I think we're seeing more opportunities of the choices that we do have. Like maybe some people didn't realize they could work from home. Some people didn't realize they could tolerate their family 24/7 and their husband. And, I love that man, but man, I cannot wait to just have some time with him. Especially if your husband's very chatty.
Right.
Mr. Chatty. We've all been through like a lot of transitions. So that's good. I'm glad everything's good on the home front.
Yeah.
As you've elevated your business, into this multiple seven figures, what are some things you feel have been really important in your evolution and that you see for the women that you work with that are moving to a certain level?
Yeah. So I love this. And I think, so this is huge. And I think one thing I'll share two things. One is sort of external and one is a lot more internal. The external thing is, I think it's about, if you think about this idea of being like a sovereign queen, what does a queen have? She has a known territory. And I think that, for me, as I have elevated and grown, it's actually been about refining how I define that territory in order to be able to grow. So, if I looked at my business 6 years ago, it was a lot more sort of amorphous. So I was really working with women leaders more generally. And I was supporting them with a number of different things. And what I have found is that the more that I refine and focus, the easier it is to scale and grow. And the more, you can do that a lot more effortlessly. So for me, that has been huge. And what's interesting is the conversation that I had to have with myself was, I can remember hearing this from Brene Brown, and she talked about how we're living in the age of significance. And people feel this burden of having to be significant and do really big things. And for me, the areas where I was specifically interested, in working with leaders, which has always been around messaging and positioning, just my commitment to voice, and making sure that we're hearing women's voices. For a long time, that didn't feel significant enough. It's like, I'm meant to do bigger things and it has to be. And that actually can interrupt the focus. And I see this a lot. I see this with women entrepreneurs who have a hard time niching or owning their space or choosing their space because it might not feel big enough.
It feels small in some way. It feels apologetic in some way.
Right. Yeah.
When really it's their power. Right. And I do see this phase, like you got to feel into it. I did it myself years ago. It's like going as far as you can and then going back. I don't want to say going back. So you even do that and verbally, but like then honing in.
Yeah.
Right? There's an expansion and then a honing in. And that is the key to acceleration.
Yeah.
That's the key when everything gets easier
Right.
and can accelerate. And
yeah. It's like you're kind of moving to higher ground. You know, it's like it's just moving to this higher place on the mountaintop, you know, where the air is cleaner and fresher. There's fewer people. Your view is better. But to your point, you know, and it's interesting, I think this is the big mistake that we make. I think we feel like we should strategically know that from the beginning. Some people do, but I have always seen it more as this process of evolution, you know, and refinement, than about, you know, a sort of miraculous conception of this, you know, perfect position. So that's kind of part of it, right? And that relates to the other part, which is the more internal part, which is about doing the work of being so cool with who you are, you know, and that's really huge too, because I think the more you grow, if you have any kind of more public facing, you know, business where you're the face of your business, where you are podcasting and speaking and all of this, as you start to build and you have an audience and you have people, that can become, it's a wonderful thing and it's a privilege. But the more voices, you know, you're hearing from, I think the more important it is to be very clear about who you are, what success looks like, what you value, and how, you know, how good are you with yourself? And we've talked about this, you know, and I can remember having a conversation with you once, and you were like, you know, it's just about being more and more you. You know, and I remember I got it at one level at that point, but I get it at a much deeper level now, to the point where I love it when people say I'm great, but I also don't really, you know what I mean? I'm just like, well, that's great that that's your opinion. And then if people are like, you know, I just don't think, you're just not my cup of tea. I'm like, well, that's great. That's your opinion. Like, I just don't, it's not my business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I was just on an interview that I was being interviewed, which I'm getting, you know, the opportunity being home is I'm having time for a lot more interviews, which is great. So I'm enjoying all these conversations, both for my show and, you know, this, and then being interviewed. And they were asking me on the show, you know, what do you feel? It was kind of a man question too. It was a man guy, you know, man guy. What's your biggest accomplishment so far? And I had to think about it. And I said, you know, it's probably not, you're not going to hear probably what you expect. You're going to probably want to hear the Inc. 500 and all this stuff for the TV show. And I said, you know what, my biggest accomplishment that I truly feel was me having the courage to go like this to my whole business and narrow down on where no one can fucking touch me.
Yeah.
That's where, like, zoning in on that genius. And, you know, I've seen you evolve to that as well. And I do think it's an evolution, and and I see, especially for the women who are here to do something of great meaning, I see that pattern. There's this expansion in the business, and you're trying it on, and you're, you know, it's great. And like, but then you're going to get even clearer, and it's like more like the pyramid model, and you're going up into that zone of genius. So
and, you know, and you know, and I saw that, right? I saw that. And the thing, because I remember, this is so funny. I can remember it was 2013. I just done B school, and I was like, you know, I think I'm going to move my business online. And someone was like, well, you must know Allie Brown. And I'm like, no. And I think you might have been pregnant with the twin. And I was like, wow, it was like this whole new world. It was amazing. But at that time, it was, you know, your territory was broader, you know what I mean? Versus this area where you work with women in this range on this stuff where no one can touch you, you know, which is really cool. What I think people don't necessarily appreciate until you do it yourself is the ovaries it takes to do that, and the work that it takes to truly hear your own voice. And to move into that. And you have to find that yourself. Like, nobody can give it to you. There's no formula to do that. You have to do it. And we don't have a lot of models, you know, so I think having, like, you sharing that so openly, I mean, it, you know it must have taken courage, because I think that it takes courage, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. You said something very pivotal that I want to mention on. And is it okay? Can you go a few minutes after the hour? Because this is
Yes, I
really good.
can. Mhm.
Okay, awesome. I had a feeling. Um, you talked about who you let in your ear,
Yeah.
which I do believe as you ascend to higher levels of your success, who you're becoming, and your business growth,
Mhm.
that becomes more critical. Can you share your advice around that?
Yeah, as few people as possible. Quite honestly, like, and this is so interesting because I used to, and this is, I think, a difference, right? Like, I used to listen to a lot of people, and I used to, whether they were qualified or not to help me, I was much more concerned about a lot of different opinions. And then that kind of evolved to, I'm just going to choose certain people that I'm going to listen to. And even now, because I think there's something that happens is, I think for women in particular, we hear the whatever, the feedback, the observation, the best practice, whatever, and we hear it. And there's this thing, well, if somebody says it, I should do it, and there's this sort of knee jerk thing, which, our education system teaches us to do and all of that. And I
Hmm.
think, what's happened now is there's a separation, there's a buffer between what somebody says and if I decide I'm going to accept that. And if I decide that I'm going to do it. And if that used to happen very quickly. It would just be this invisible thing where it all of a sudden became my thought.
Hmm.
Now, and this doesn't happen, like, I'm sensitive, right? So it doesn't, sometimes I'll hear something, react to it immediately. But I can see myself doing that. And so for me, the people now that I let in my ear are fewer and fewer. And I actually, a lot of my work is about, developing trusted advisors, observing not just what people say, but what they do, and taking my own counsel around things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And it was such an honor to work with you for the 2 years that we did. And I refer many people to you and your programs. It's just solid, especially what you've tuned into now with the messaging
Mhm.
and all that. And I'm just so glad you brought that up because I think it's something typically people think you're ascending because you're taking in more.
Yeah.
And I believe it's actually the opposite. You're taking in less, you're more tuned in to what is aligned for you personally. And
Yeah.
it's, I still have many people walking through the door that are trying to start to tune out a lot of those voices. They'll come
Mhm.
in with someone said I should be doing this and I should be doing this and I should get rid of this. But no, let's start with you
Yeah.
and rebuild from here. And that's what's happening right now, whether people like it or not.
Yeah.
um, it's a time to tune in and rebuild from here what we're here to do. And ladies, this is an amazing time for you to truly use this time to step into your purpose and what you feel you're here to do in some way. And it's probably not going to look like anyone else's. We start off with the models,
Yep.
learn, go
Mhm.
gather,
Mhm.
test, grow, and then you're going to get to a point like, you know what, I'm creating my own model.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for women, especially because we don't have a lot of role models for that.
No.
We're the first generation probably
Yeah.
to see, and also there's this internet world which is like dog years and moves quickly, like so quickly, like what you
Totally.
were doing 2 years ago isn't what you're doing today and what I'm not doing today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just crazy, but it's this, we need to cut ourselves some slack too, that this is a new process for us with our feminine OS.
Yeah.
Like this is a whole new way of thinking and working and doing, and we're here during this time, like it or not, that all this stuff's going on, and it's a chance to really tune in now. So you
Yeah.
know
And and I know that people are going to be watching this. And here's what we don't want. I'm going to speak for the two of us collectively.
yeah, yeah.
Here's what we don't want you to do. What we don't want you to do is be like, Eleanor and Ali said I should stop listening and I should just stop. So I'm going to listen to them. I mean,
See, then they're doing it again.
suffer, right? Like, I think it's about like the silence, right? Like having that time to sit and to think about, like, how does this sit with me? I was speaking with a client this morning and she's like, it's weird. I have so much going on, and I just want to all I wanna do is be out in the garden digging in the dirt with my toddler today, like, it's really
Mm,
weird. And I'm like, "No, that is when you have smart, capable, women who are not procrastinators saying, "I feel like I need to be doing this. I feel like I don't wanna get out of bed." I'm like, "Then don't." That is creative
yeah.
energy. It's trying to tell you something. You have to listen. Well, do whatever you want, but I advise
Yeah.
consider listening to it.
Totally. Get the bills paid, girls, right?
Right,
I mean, you
exactly.
gotta get the
Get 'em
bills
paid.
paid, but it is funny, I still feel like, we have this time, I should be producing more, I should be
Yeah,
producing more content, and then I'm thinking, "Okay," I'm telling the team, I'm like, "You know what? This afternoon, the kids are working on the school project, I'm gonna be done at 2
yeah.
and be doing this with them," and so this is, and this may sound cliche saying all this, like, people are like, "Of course," but, it's, we are so immersed more in that production model than we realize. So pick and choose the projects that like light you up, that'll make you money, and use this time. Use some of this
Yeah,
time. You can't use it all probably, but use some of this time for that. How
yeah.
has the people you've surrounded yourself with, you talked about being in your ear, but generally, do you find that you keep up leveling, who you are surrounding yourself with?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, for sure, and I mean, I think there's a few things, like, number 1, they have to have done their work personally, like, because I think, I have, a lot of friends, many who I've met through our work together and your premier group, I have friends who they've done their work. That's really huge, and really important to me. It's a smaller circle of friends, and I talk to them, we support each other, but it's literally like, it's the Teddy Roosevelt thing, like, they have to be in the arena. Like, I realize this, and this was hard for me, and I think this comes up for women all the time who are really elevating. It's the fear of leaving people behind,
Mm,
right? And so I think it's that, like, questioning how to what degree is this impacting me, and I had to sort of make my peace with that. But it really came down to this place of I wanted to surround myself with women who are in the arena. Because here's the other conversation that no one has, which is that, for every woman, and this isn't popular, this is not a popular opinion, but I know to be true that for women who have really elevated and women who have, really gone out and had the guts to step into this position at the top of their industries, there has been a tremendous amount of support for them along the way. But what they will talk about when the cameras are off and when they're just kind of with that circle of friends is there's been a lot of X's on their back too. And so the courage to hold that and to stand up is so inspiring. Like, we need to see more of that. So when I see a woman who has led the way, like you, when I see a woman who has really stepped into her power, I have nothing but respect, because I know what it takes. And I know and I know the impact that that has for people who are watching.
yeah, that's a great distinction, actually, not just people who are successful, but who have done the work, and that's who you want to surround yourself with. It's a different level of thinking, of being. And I'm going to give a quick shout out here that the show is brought to you by The Trust. The Trust is our new network for women who are in the 7 and 8 figure ranges. If you'd like to learn more, go to jointhetrust.org. We are having many virtual events right now. I'm all about in person. This has been my transition. I'm like, when I started this thing, I'm like, I love in person. It's mostly going to be in person. And now we're pivoting to virtual. But I have to say it's been a great transition because we're able to bring in now guests we couldn't get before.
Yeah.
We're able to have conversations we couldn't have before. The app is rocking. So we're really excited for more people to learn about it. It's jointhetrust.org. And Eleanor, wrap up just with one of your best pieces of advice if you've been saving anything, and then tell us where we can go find out
Ooh.
more about that course again, the Marketing Through Adversity.
Yeah, my best piece of advice is to, and this was my best pieces of advice really is to understand that your value comes from who you are. Not just what you do, not what you produce, not what you create. That is something that is so huge, and it helps you kind of elevate to the leader, that you were born to be. So that would be my piece of advice. And yeah, if you want to get more insight right now, on how to market in a way that is elevated, how to market in a way that really enhances your reputation throughout, one of the worst economic crises since the Great Depression, you can head over to adversitymarketing.com.
Adversitymarketing.com. Were you psyched when you got that .com?
I was like, yes. I was like, it's meant to be.
I always see that as a sign, and we're like, it's not taken. That's the name of the program. And it's rarer and rarer these days. You'll come up with something that someone hasn't bought for some obscure reason. Right? So I love that. Eleanor, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, you got to go follow Eleanor Beaton. She's on all the social, very active on LinkedIn as well. Yep. Correct. And thank Eleanor, you had me on the first LinkedIn Live I was a few weeks ago, and I'm like, well, this is fun. I'm going to do this too. Thanks for getting me in the groove, and now I'm having a ball. And so it's been great to have you on the show, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.